let's talk about Demna's Gucci debut. I know everyone has been talking about this online. I kind of want to delve deep and really talk about, the whole story in a very 360 way, as I do a lot of times on this channel. So I think the best starting point, to be honest, is this article. Demna and Gucci written in the stars. Now, I'm not going to read this article. I'm just going to summarize it. Obviously, I've read it already. I have my notes. So to talk about kind of what Demna has been up to at Gucci, he had a Gucci lookbook called La Famiglia. La Famiglia is a Gucci lookbook that is a lookbook of Gucci archetypes, like different Gucci characters. He also today dropped The Tiger, which is a 16-minute film, which premiered in Milan. And it's really just kind of talking about, I don't know why I said 16. It's a 33-minute film. And it's talking about the different characters, and it's kind of storytelling about the different characters. Now, this obviously is coming after a massive and very, very successful tenure at Balenciaga. He ended it with his couture show in July. He's obviously needed time to transition into Gucci, as all of you know. And, this is kind of like a rush collection because he's only had 2 months, really, to show this collection. Now, when we think about Demna and we talk about this whole story of Demna, because I know a lot of people are saying, this is a terrible debut, this is like not that great. We have to remember once again, he's only had 2 months. He's only had 2 months. He's only had 2 months. Now, something also really random that I thought was really interesting in covering this whole story in terms of Demna at Gucci is the fact that Kering themselves actually requested that there's product for stores, right? So even though Kering agreed that, okay, cool, you can show clothing within 2 months, all we want is that you put clothing in stores. Now, later today, in literally 3 hours, I'm going to be in the Bond Street store in Gucci, and I'm going to see a preview of a lot of the clothing that we're seeing in this lookbook, which would be interesting to see, like the quality and the different fabrics he's using and how it really looks in person. So that should be really fascinating. But I cannot remember the last time that a creative director had clothing go into stores since they've, actively been creative director this quickly. I've never seen a creative director join a brand and within 2 months, they're revamping the whole stores worldwide and they have all the new product in the stores. Like, I've never seen that in my life. Demna does the buy now, see now thing. He's been doing it at Balenciaga. But the concept of a new creative director going to a brand and within 2 months, they've been able to change the stores and bring in new product is wild. That's like insane. And it says a lot. It says that Kering really wants Gucci to work. They want the Sabato de Sano stuff out of stores immediately because it's clearly not selling. That's why they want Demna stuff in stores as quickly as possible, as humanly possible, of course. So it shows a level of like desperation that I don't think I've seen from any luxury brand in recent times, to be honest. So yeah. And when you look at the clothing from his debut collection, of course, he looked very deep into the Gucci archives. I already made a video in the past about, how he was looking deep into the Tom Ford archives. He was looking at different 1970s pieces. He was also looking at different elements of Tom Ford. So I'll give you some examples. There's like a Tom Ford SS 1992 piece that he referenced in this collection, because I don't really see people talking about this online for some strange reason. So this piece right here is from Gucci Spring Summer 1992, and essentially this is one of the pieces that was referenced in the Demna collection, right? Because when people are like, oh my god, there's just like men wearing like speedos and like all this kind of shit, and they're like, obviously, because people just associate like sexy with Tom Ford, right? Just automatically. So they're like, yeah, it's a Tom Ford thing. But I didn't see people, saying the actual reference, right? And when you go through this collection, of course, Demna said these are different characters that make up this sort of Gucci world. That's why it's called La Famiglia. I also like that the first look was a trunk because it kind of talks and speaks to the heritage of the brand. I think one of the big issues with Gucci, and we talk about this all the time, is that it's very hard to pinpoint what the house codes are. Obviously, there are different things you can look towards. You can look towards, bamboo handles. You can look towards horse bits. You can look to, there's different things, but it's not a lot of the Gucci signifiers are not strong enough. Maybe the gross grain, but there's nothing. There aren't really strong house codes, and I think this is really a problem with a lot of the luxury goods houses because they're not founded on like ready to wear or like couture, where it's a lot easier to come up with house codes from a clothing perspective. So I think that Demna, because I think he's very good at world building, I think one thing that he will definitely bring to Gucci is kind of creating these sort of house codes that then moving forward, Gucci can use and have as like signifiers of the brand. But yeah, you can see there's all like different characters. This La VIP is really funny because obviously it's supposed to mimic sort of like the typical VIP customer for Gucci. But why I think this is really funny is like, why are they wearing head to toe Gucci prints? Is this Demna kind of indirectly saying that the typical VIP Gucci customer just buys really brash, loud Gucci pieces to the point where they have Gucci plastered all over their body? Or is it just him saying, you know, the typical VIP would have so many Gucci pieces, they're basically like Gucci'd all over, and this is like a very caricature depiction of what that would look like. It's kind of like a in jest. So that was funny. You have all kinds of different characters, and the characters which we'll look at in the show notes, they are explained in the show notes, all the different characters. This is also kind of an idea that he's played with at Balenciaga. This character here is the Narcisista, which obviously stands for narcissistic, and obviously this is channeling Tom Ford with the buttons buttoned down all the way to the waist. You also have this kind of double G Gucci motif. Of course, this is a motif that we've seen from Tom Ford, like as you can see here, this is spring summer 1992. But then this is something that Alessandro Michele popularized with belts and different accessories. Alessandro Michele famously worked for Tom Ford as an accessories designer, so there was a lot of stuff that he took and then changed slightly and, you know, worked on and made more popular, which is why I think Alessandro Michele had such a successful time at Gucci. Something really interesting too that I'm really fascinated by, because this is something that I've always said that Demna has been amazing at, is footwear design. Footwear design is like what Demna is sensational at. I think that during Demna's time at Balenciaga, there was not really any other brand that was really innovating in the footwear space the way that Balenciaga was. And I hope that he can bring that to Gucci. Here we're seeing these sort of pointy kind of, I don't even know what to call them. They're kind of just like pointy slippers in a way. Some of them have these like Gucci logos embossed. Some of them are just like plain, but that's interesting. I want to see how people take to that. When I go to the store, I definitely will be looking out for that to see kind of if they have those and what those look like up close. You have many other characters too. You have like, you know, the gallery people, the introverted people. You have this is like the typical like Tom Ford, but with a Demna twist. So yeah, you have all these different Gucci characters that make up the Gucci universe. La Bomba, looking like a mob wife. You've got the party boy, La Bomba number 2. So you guys get the point anyway. You get the point. The snob, prima donna, the diva, the flora. The flora is self-explanatory because obviously that is the Gucci flora print. So yeah, makes all the sense in the world. 1 second, let me just keep going here, and then we have this is also very Demna, right? Remember at the Balenciaga collections, the ready-to-wear collections, everything would be really commercial, and then the last like 4 to 5 looks would be these like crazy pieces. He's basically doing the same thing at Gucci. And like when you learn about the construction, you're like, oh my God, this is insane. It took like 40 hours of handwork to make. He always does that. He's always done that. Now, let's talk about kind of what people like about the collection and what people don't like about the collection. So what people I've seen online, people saying they don't like, is that we're not really seeing a lot of Demna signatures in this collection. And I can see what they mean, because it is kind of like a melting pot of references, whether that's, you know, Alessandro Michele, like we're looking at like something like this is very Alessandro Michele with the pussy bow blouse, right? Or we're looking at Tom Ford, like the buttons button down to the waist. We're looking at different things. And there are some things too that definitely remind me of his Balenciaga, like that Flora character that has the Gucci Flora print. The silhouette is very Demna, even though I know Demna said, you know, we're going in a different direction entirely. I definitely, looking at that, think that the silhouette is very Demna. And when I looked at it, the first thing it reminded me of is this. Do you guys remember when Gucci had the Balenciaga hack? It totally reminded me of this, because I think this actually had a Gucci floral print with a Balenciaga silhouette. Yeah, it was this. So this piece, this look here, is exactly what I'm talking about with the Gucci flora. So it's like, we've even seen this from him from when he did the Gucci hack. So a lot of the pieces we've seen from him, and if not, it's like a reference to Tom Ford or Alessandro Michele and stuff like that. So we are really yearning to see a bit more of a Demna signature. That being said, I definitely think that it's still a good start because it's only 2 months and it's not really his debut anyway. This is still a soft launch. He made that very clear going back to the article that I was showing you earlier. He made it very clear that this is a soft launch. And he said very clearly in this interview that he's interested in exploring a new minimalism, is what he's calling it, while balancing Gucci's flamboyance. And that's where, when he was talking about him claiming he's going in a completely different direction to what he was doing at Balenciaga, that's really what that's what he's talking about. So we really need to look forward to his proper debut for Gucci in February to really see this idea of this balance between minimalism and maximalism, and aiming for the perfect duality between these things, and, you know, this concept of a new minimalism and that sort of stuff. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how he does it. Something fascinating, actually, just to give you guys some little tidbits that I got from the interview. Something that really fascinated me that he said in this interview is that he was surprised when Kering approached him for the Gucci job because he felt like big brands were playing it safe, which is interesting coming from him. However, Gucci have tried everything and it hasn't worked. So at this point, they have to be open to new ideas. Otherwise, it's just going to continue to get worse. So they've almost cornered themselves where they have no choice anyway. They try to play it safe and it completely backfired, and they understand now that you can't play it that safe. It doesn't work. So that's why they needed someone like Demna to really, you know, imbue some energy into the brand, to be honest. And it's funny how when he was describing Gucci, he was describing Gucci as this like playground full of rich creative ingredients versus Balenciaga's constraints. Now, I really wonder what he means by that. When he says that Gucci is a playground full of rich creative ingredients while versus Balenciaga's constraints. Did he feel constrained at Balenciaga? Maybe he felt constrained by the expectations of what you would do at the House of Balenciaga because it's associated with couture and like certain silhouettes and a certain look that people felt Demna was going away from season to season. And maybe he feels like at a place like Gucci that doesn't have well-defined house codes the way that Balenciaga does, there's more freedom to do different things. If that's what he's alluding to, I definitely think he's right in that sense. I definitely agree. He said, to be fair, we sometimes know Demna be saying shit. He does, but it's just good to just talk about what he's been saying. But this felt so safe. I was surprised, to be honest, but I'll wait and truly judge next season. Yeah, that's the thing. This is supposed to just be like a safe transition collection before we get his proper debut in February. So it being safe is neither here nor there, you know what I mean? So yeah, so that's kind of essentially his debut collection. Just to go through the show notes really quickly, just to kind of talk about some of the key themes. It says, this collection marks the genesis of a new Gucci era, unapologetically sexy, extravagant, and daring. La Famiglia is a study of the Gucciness of Gucci, an expression of the brand and a mindset and a shared aesthetic language. It reinterprets the house's codes through framed portraits of an extended Gucci family, captured by Catherine Opie, made up of singular personalities and distinctive aesthetic attitudes, the different facets of Gucci's personas, which is basically what I alluded to earlier, in terms of like how he said he's essentially creating these different characters that represent his understanding of what Gucci means or what it, you know, represents to him, in a sense. Reading on, the lookbook opens with La Archetypo, a monogram travel trunk that highlights the house's origins as a valigeria, followed by Incasata in a 60s style red little red coat that reflects her fiery demeanor. It's also quite funny because Salvatore De Sano tried to make red a thing when he had the Ancora red, and now we're going with red. Demna's going with red, but just doing it in a different way. I wonder if that's like a... I always wonder if these things sometimes are like from up above, like from execs, saying that we've spent so much money developing reds and, you know, playing with red dyes, you just have to use it somewhere. You just can't get away from it. And also red is kind of very typical for Gucci. If you think of the gross grain, that's why red is like a big Gucci color anyway. But moving on. La Bomba's volatile feline sass is mirrored by her stripes, and La Cativa embodies the severe elegance of a femme fatale. Miss Aperitivo is simply preoccupied with having the time of her life, while La Influencer embodies the social media fashion enthusiast. La Mecenate or La Contessa, Scuria, and Prima Donna exude refined Italian elegance, while Principino and La Principessa capture two sides of the same coin. They want to be the center of attention, which is actually quite funny and very, very interesting. The Italian art of effortless elegance, sprezzatura, informs gestures of ease, sling-back kitten heels and soft leather mules worn stepped in, the mastery of spontaneous nonchalance. Heritage signatures are revisited and revived. The Gucci Bamboo 1947 bag, a 78-year-old signature that remains as innovative today as ever, is reproportioned alongside the horsebit loafer, a house icon since 1953. The floral motif appears as you know it or reimagined in a nocturnal incarnation. The GG monogram, Gucci or Gucci's initials, appears throughout, worn with head-to-toe abandon from lens to loafer, all or nothing. Silhouette spanning extremes, from the maximalist grandeur of a feathered opera coat and high jewelry to the neo-minimal sensuality of seamless hosiery garments. Dressing for pleasure is emphasized and glamour is carried over into menswear. The elegance of evening wear is applied to transparent bodycon sets and sophisticated black tie swimwear, a new interpretation of La Dolce Vita. La Famiglia marks Gucci's return to storytelling, going back to the future by way of the past, defining the aesthetic base upon which Gucci's vision will be built, leading up to his first show in February. So that's kind of what they said in the show. Last thing I actually want to talk about, because they mentioned bags, there was something that was surprising about this collection, to be honest, was the fact that there wasn't too much of a focus on the bags. Secondly, I think these are really cool. We were talking about this in the Discord. These kind of like exaggerated aviator sunglasses. These are quite cool. I wonder how people are going to take to these. And there are also different elements commercially that could be really cool, like Gucci ties, I think could sell really well. When you think of different luxury brands like Bottega Veneta, they are quite synonymous now with, you know, leather manipulation and fabric manipulation and stuff like that. And their leather ties sell like hotcake. So if Gucci can kind of play with fabrics and then find colors and fabrics that are very much associated with Demna's time at Gucci, they can start selling commercial pieces like the belt, you know, like the sunglasses, like these crazy aviators. You even got the double G over exaggerated earrings, and then you have a chain, and then you have a belt. Kind of what Demna was saying in the show notes, that it's, you know, completely over exaggerated. You also have these horsebit details as the belt, also the horsebit loafers being transformed into these sort of pointy, you know, slippers, which is very Balenciaga, like taking like a loafer and making it into a more exaggerated silhouette. Here, the double G once again in the earrings and the chain, obviously classic bag and all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of the rundown with Demna's soft debut, kind of debut collection, if we're going to call it that.